I never thought a charity gala in downtown Manhattan would change my life forever. But sometimes, the universe has a twisted sense of humor about where it decides to teach you who you really are. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was buzzing with New York's elite that October evening. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over designer gowns worth more than most people's cars, while the gentle hum of sophisticated conversation mixed with the soft clink of champagne flutes. Everyone looked perfect, polished, like they had stepped out of a magazine spread about success and philanthropy. But I wasn't there as a guest. At least, that's what everyone thought. My name is Alex, and I'm what you'd call a lifestyle influencer. 2.3 million followers who hang on my every word about luxury travel, exclusive events, and the glamorous life I've carefully curated online. Tonight, I had convinced the event organizers that I was a freelance cameraman documenting the evening for a major media outlet. Complete fabrication, of course. I just wanted access to content that would make my followers lose their minds with envy. As I adjusted my fake press badge and hefted the professional camera I'd rented for $300, I felt that familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was my drug of choice. Finding ways into exclusive spaces, capturing moments that others couldn't access, and turning them into viral gold that would keep my engagement rates climbing. The charity was raising money for underprivileged children's education, which made for absolutely perfect content. My audience ate up anything that showed my philanthropic side, even though my largest donation to date had been a $20 tip to a street musician that I filmed for my Instagram stories. Walking through that ballroom, camera in hand, I felt invincible. Politicians whose faces I recognized from news broadcasts nodded at me professionally. A-list celebrities smiled politely as I moved past their tables. I belonged here, or at least I had convinced everyone that I did. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was pretending to work behind the camera when my real job was performing in front of one. But that's the thing about being an influencer. You become so good at playing characters that sometimes you forget which one is actually you. I had studied real cameramen for weeks, watching how they moved, how they held their equipment, how they blended into the background while capturing everything. Tonight, I was giving the performance of my lifetime, and nobody suspected that the man documenting their generosity was actually there to exploit it. As I positioned myself near the silent auction tables, watching wealthy donors casually bid amounts that could pay my rent for 6 months, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow, I would edit this footage into a masterpiece of aspirational content. My followers would see me rubbing shoulders with the elite, working at an exclusive charity event, living the life they all desperately wanted. What I didn't know was that in less than an hour, everything I thought I knew about success, authenticity, and what actually mattered in life would be completely shattered by a girl who couldn't care less about the show everyone else was putting on. But first, I had a performance to give, and I had never been better at pretending to be someone I wasn't. The main event was about to start, and I could feel the electricity in the room shift as conversations died down and guests began settling into their seats. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The centerpiece performance that would give me the most compelling footage for my content. On stage, a renowned Broadway singer was preparing to perform, her sequined dress catching the spotlight like scattered diamonds. The audience held champagne flutes delicately, their faces already arranged in expressions of cultured appreciation. I positioned myself strategically near the front, camera ready, playing my role with the precision of a method actor who had studied for this part his entire career. A few genuine photographers nodded at me in professional acknowledgement, and I felt that familiar surge of satisfaction. I had fooled them completely. For weeks, I had watched their mannerisms, studied how they moved through crowds, learned their unspoken language of subtle gestures and equipment handling. Tonight, I was one of them, at least in their eyes. As the lights dimmed and the first notes filled the room, I started filming, but my mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles and editing possibilities. This footage would be perfect for my upcoming video titled something like, Behind the Scenes at NYC's Most Exclusive Charity Gala, or How I Got Access to Manhattan's Elite. I could already visualize the thumbnail, me in my fake cameraman gear with the glittering ballroom in the background, maybe with some text overlay about exclusive access. The singer's voice soared through the room, a hauntingly beautiful rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow that seemed to cast a spell over everyone present. Her voice carried years of training, decades of experience, and an emotional depth that made even the most jaded socialites pause their networking to actually listen. I filmed dutifully, capturing wide shots of the mesmerized audience, close-ups of tear-filled eyes, the perfect blend of luxury and emotion that my followers craved. This was content gold, authentic reactions from real people in an exclusive setting. My engagement rates would skyrocket. But then something caught my peripheral vision that made me slowly lower my camera. While every other person in that ballroom was transfixed by the stage performance, there was one girl, probably in her early 20s, sitting alone at a table near the back. She wasn't watching the show at all. Instead, she was completely absorbed in what appeared to be a stack of handwritten letters, occasionally wiping tears from her eyes with the back of her hand. I found myself staring, forgetting entirely about the performance happening just feet away from me. In a room full of people performing their wealth, their status, their carefully curated versions of compassion, here was someone who seemed genuinely, authentically moved by something completely different. She had long brown hair that fell naturally around her shoulders, no elaborate styling or extensions like the other women in the room. Her dress was simple, elegant but clearly not designer, and she wore no jewelry except for small silver earrings that caught the light when she moved. But what struck me most was her complete indifference to the spectacle that had everyone else mesmerized. As the Broadway star hit an impossibly high note that sent chills through the audience, this mysterious girl carefully folded one of her letters and held it against her chest, as if it contained something more precious than all the diamonds glittering around the room. I realized I had stopped filming entirely, my expensive rented camera hanging uselessly at my side while I watched her read what looked like handwritten notes from children. The irony hit me like a physical blow. Here I was, supposedly documenting this evening, but I was completely captivated by the one person who wasn't part of the show. Something about her pulled at a part of me that I had buried under years of curated content and manufactured experiences. She seemed real in a way that I had forgotten was possible. I found myself lowering my camera completely, my supposed job forgotten as the Broadway star's voice soared to its crescendo. While thunderous applause erupted around me, I was watching this mysterious girl carefully fold one of her letters and hold it close to her chest, as if it contained something infinitely more valuable than all the wealth displayed in this room. The applause died down, and guests began their intermission ritual of networking and champagne refills. I should have been filming these moments. The casual conversations where million-dollar deals were made, the air kisses between celebrities, the perfectly orchestrated social dance that my followers would devour. Instead, I found my feet carrying me toward her table like I was being pulled by some invisible force. She was still there, now reading what looked like a program, but I could see more letters scattered around her small purse. Her table was one of the cheaper ones, I realized, tucked away from the prime real estate near the stage where the major donors sat. Yet she seemed more content than anyone else in the room. My heart was pounding as I approached, and I couldn't understand why. I had interviewed A-list celebrities, crashed exclusive parties, talked my way into boardrooms and backstage areas, but walking up to this girl felt more terrifying than any of those calculated performances. "Excuse me," I said, still carrying my camera to maintain my cover, though my voice came out less confident than I intended. "I'm documenting tonight's event, and I couldn't help but notice you seem to have a different perspective on the evening. Would you mind if I asked what those letters are?" She looked up at me with the most genuine eyes I had ever seen. No makeup artist could create that kind of natural beauty. No Instagram filter could capture that depth of authenticity. When she smiled, it reached her eyes in a way that made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't name. "Oh, these?" She gestured to the letters with a tenderness that made me lean closer. "They're thank you notes from kids at the school this charity supports. I volunteer there as a tutor." The words hit me like a physical blow. My fake cameraman persona almost cracked completely. "You volunteer there?" "Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 years. She said simply, as if dedicating 8 hours of her week to helping underprivileged children was the most natural thing in the world. "These kids wrote to thank the donors, but most people here will never see them. I thought someone should read them tonight, you know? While everyone's celebrating how much money they raised, I wanted to remember why we're really here." I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a mixture of genuine shame and unexpected admiration that made my throat constrict. Here I was, exploiting a charity event for social media content, while she was honoring the actual purpose behind it all. "This one is from Marcus, age 7, she continued, picking up a letter written in crayon. "He says thank you for the new playground, because now he has somewhere safe to play after school while his mom works her second job." As she read those innocent words, I realized I was holding my breath. When was the last time I had heard something so purely honest? My entire world was built on manufactured moments and calculated authenticity. But this was real, in a way that made everything else feel hollow. "Would you like to hear another one?" she asked, and I found myself nodding, completely forgetting about my camera, my content, my followers, everything except the sound of her voice reading these letters from children whose lives had been genuinely changed. If this story is hitting you in the feels like it's hitting me, smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed your perspective? And don't forget to hit the like button if you want to see where this goes. Because trust me, you're not ready for what happens next. For the first time in my adult life, I was experiencing something that couldn't be monetized, couldn't be turned into content, couldn't be used to boost my personal brand. And it was terrifying and beautiful and completely overwhelming all at once. "What's your name?" I asked, setting my camera down on her table for the first time that evening. The weight of it leaving my hands felt symbolic somehow, like I was putting down more than just equipment. "Emma," she replied, and even her name sounded genuine in a way that made my carefully constructed online persona feel like a costume I desperately wanted to shed. "And you're the cameraman who's been filming everything except the actual performance for the last 20 minutes. My blood turned to ice. She had been watching me watch her. How did you? "Real cameramen don't stop filming during the main act to stare at random audience members," she said with a small smile that somehow managed to be both knowing and kind. "Plus, your press badge is upside down." I looked down in absolute horror. She was right. In my nervousness about approaching her, I had fumbled with my fake credentials like an amateur. All my weeks of preparation, all my careful study of professional behavior, undone by a simple mistake that revealed me as the fraud I was. "So, who are you really?" Emma asked, but her tone wasn't accusatory. There was curiosity there, maybe even amusement, as if she found my deception more interesting than offensive. For the first time in years, I found myself wanting to tell the complete truth to another human being. The urge was so strong it physically hurt, like trying to hold back tears or laughter. "My name is Alex. I'm an influencer. I lied to get in here tonight because I wanted content for my social media. I waited for her to be disgusted, to call security, to look at me with the contempt I probably deserved. Instead, she laughed. Not mockingly, but with genuine surprise that made her whole face light up. An influencer who pretends to be a cameraman to crash charity events? That's either the most pathetic thing I've ever heard, or the most honest thing anyone said to me all night. Probably both, I admitted, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment and something else. Relief, maybe, at finally being seen for who I really was. Emma picked up one of the letters, handling it like it was made of precious metal. "Want to hear what real impact sounds like? This is from Maria, age 8. She cleared her throat and began reading in a voice that made every word feel sacred. "Thank you for helping my school get new books. Now I can read about dragons and princesses, and maybe one day I can write stories too." As she read those simple, honest words from a child whose life had been genuinely changed, I realized I had never heard anything more beautiful in my entire life. Not the Broadway performance that had just ended, not the sophisticated conversations happening around us, not even the carefully crafted content I consumed and created every day. "She draws pictures to go with her stories now," Emma continued, pulling out a small crayon drawing that had been tucked inside the letter. "This one is about a princess who saves her kingdom by teaching everyone to read." I stared at the drawing, stick figures and wobbly letters that spelled out "Princess Teacher," and felt something crack open inside my chest. This 8-year-old girl had more genuine creativity and purpose in her crayon drawing than I had in my entire social media empire. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "Volunteering? Since I graduated college. I was going to be a teacher, but..." She paused, looking down at the letters. "Let's just say life had other plans. But these kids, they remind me why I wanted to teach in the first place. They're not performing for anyone. They're just grateful, genuinely grateful, for the chance to learn." The contrast hit me like a sledgehammer. Here I was, someone with a massive platform and endless opportunities, using my influence to show off and accumulate more followers. Meanwhile, Emma was quietly changing lives, one tutoring session at a time, asking for nothing in return except the privilege of watching children discover their potential. I had built my entire identity around being seen, being envied, being admired by strangers on the internet. But sitting across from Emma, reading letters from kids who had never heard of social media influence, I realized I had never felt more invisible to myself. Emma spent the next hour reading me letter after letter, each one hitting me like a revelation I wasn't prepared for. There was David, age 9, who thanked the donors for computers because now he could learn coding and maybe build video games someday. There was Sophia, 10 years old, whose letter was written in both English and Spanish because the new bilingual program helped her feel proud of speaking 2 languages instead of ashamed. With every story, I felt the carefully constructed walls around my heart crumbling. These weren't just thank you notes. They were windows into lives that had been fundamentally changed by something as simple as believing in a child's potential. "This is what I don't understand about people like you," Emma said, though her voice held no judgment, just a sadness that made my chest ache. "You have this massive platform, this ability to reach millions of people, and you use it to show off fake experiences instead of real impact." Her words cut deeper than any criticism I had ever received online. The trolls, the hate comments, the occasional backlash. None of that had ever made me question my choices the way her gentle honesty did in that moment. "I never thought about it that way," I said, and the admission felt like confessing to a crime I didn't know I was committing. "These kids don't need another influencer showing off at a fancy party," she continued, carefully placing the letters back in order. "But they could use someone with your reach telling their stories, showing people what their donations actually accomplish." I watched her handle those letters with such reverence, and I realized that in my entire career of creating content, I had never treated anything with that level of respect. Everything was just material to be consumed, processed, and monetized. "Do you know what the saddest part is?" Emma asked, looking directly at me with those impossibly honest eyes. "Half the people in this room tonight will post about being here, about supporting education, about making a difference. But they'll never know Maria's name, or that David dreams of building video games, or that Sophia is writing poetry in 2 languages now." The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. I had been planning to do exactly that, post about my night at this exclusive charity event, positioning myself as someone who cared about important causes, all while never actually learning about the cause itself. As the evening wound down and guests began making their exits, Emma gathered her letters and prepared to leave. "I take the subway back to Brooklyn," she said, standing up and smoothing down her simple dress. "I'm guessing you have a car service waiting?" The assumption stung because it was accurate. I had indeed arranged for a luxury car to pick me up, another detail that would look good in my Instagram stories. But suddenly, the thought of riding alone in the back of that car, scrolling through the footage I had captured tonight, felt unbearably hollow. "Actually," I said, surprising myself with the words that came out, "would you mind if I rode the subway with you? I'd like to hear more about the school." Emma studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was serious or if this was just another performance. The scrutiny made me uncomfortable because I wasn't entirely sure myself which one it was. "Okay," she said finally, "but fair warning, it's not very Instagram-worthy." "Maybe that's exactly what I need," I replied. And for the first time all night, I meant every word I said. On that subway ride through the tunnels beneath Manhattan, sitting next to Emma as she told me about her students' dreams and struggles, I realized something profound and terrifying. I had been so busy creating a fake life that looked perfect online that I had forgotten how to live a real one. The train rocked gently as we traveled through the darkness, and with each story Emma shared, I felt myself shedding layers of the person I had become. By the time we reached her stop in Brooklyn, I knew that the man who had walked into that charity gala was not the same one who was walking out. That was 6 months ago, and I'm sitting here now in the same classroom where Emma volunteers, watching her help a group of 3rd graders with their reading comprehension. The afternoon sunlight streams through windows that could use new blinds, illuminating faces that shine with the kind of joy that can't be manufactured or filtered. Today, my content looks completely different. Instead of luxury hotel rooms and exclusive parties, I share stories from Jefferson Elementary, where Emma volunteers, where I now volunteer too, every Tuesday and Thursday. The irony isn't lost on me that I finally found my authentic voice by learning to listen to others. My follower count actually grew when I started being real. Turns out people were starving for genuine stories, for impact they could see and touch, for change that mattered beyond the next trending hashtag. Emma was right. They didn't need another fake lifestyle guru selling them dreams. They needed someone willing to use their platform for something that actually transformed lives. Last week, one of my videos about the school's outdated computer lab raised enough money to outfit the entire room with new equipment. The response was overwhelming, not just in donations, but in messages from followers who said they had been waiting for content that made them feel something real. Maria, the little girl who wrote about dragons and princesses, is 9 now. She sent me a thank you note last month, written in her careful cursive handwriting. She's writing her own stories now, complete with illustrations, and her teacher says she's reading at a 5th grade level. When I posted about Maria's progress, the video got more genuine engagement than any luxury travel content I had ever created. Emma and I? Well, let's just say that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin when you stop pretending to be someone you're not and start becoming who you were meant to be. She saw through my performance that night at the gala, but more importantly, she helped me see through it too. I still use cameras, but now I'm always on the right side of the lens, showing the world what really matters, not what looks good in a thumbnail. Yesterday, I filmed David, now 10 years old, showing off the simple video game he coded using the new computers. His pride was infectious, his joy completely unfiltered, and I realized that this was what authentic content actually looked like. The girl who ignored the stage taught me that the most important stories are often happening in the audience, in the quiet moments, in the handwritten letters from children who dare to dream bigger than their circumstances. Sometimes I think about the man I was that night at the Plaza Hotel, so desperate for content that he was willing to lie his way into a charity event. That version of me feels like a stranger now. Someone I knew once but can barely recognize. The transformation wasn't instant. It took months of unlearning toxic habits, of choosing substance over spectacle, of measuring success by impact instead of impressions. But every Tuesday and Thursday, when I walk into that classroom and see Emma reading with her students, when I watch kids like Maria and David and Sophia discover what they're capable of, I remember why I made this choice. Real influence isn't about how many people follow you. It's about how many lives you help change for the better. If this story inspired you to think differently about influence, impact, and authenticity, I need you to join this mission. Subscribe to this channel where we share real stories that matter, stories that will restore your faith in what social media can actually accomplish when used with purpose. Hit that notification bell because every Tuesday, we feature a new story from kids whose lives are being transformed by education and opportunity. Like this video if you believe in the power of authentic storytelling, and share it with someone who needs to remember that real influence comes from real impact. Most importantly, comment below and tell me, what's one way you can use your own platform, no matter how big or small, to make a difference? Because that's what this is all about, turning our reach into real change, one story at a time.